directly in charge. We send the money that was being posted there. Every district gets money direct from the central government as a grant. The total grant to the local governments is 78 billion annually, divided among the local governments, meaning that there is no district that gets less than 500 million per year. And this money is in the hands of the district local governments. And the accounting officer is the chief administrative officer. You are the supervisors of those local governments. This money is at the district. The activities that have been highlighted here are activities that are done by the local governments, which are all under your supervision. Some of the activities that were being highlighted that were direct from the center are those that are covered by, we have the center projects. One, the solar powered systems, which are funded by the World Bank under IWNDP project. We have the large piped water systems, also under by the World Bank under the IWNDP projects. We have borehole drilling and rehabilitation that is still centralized. And then the EXIM. The EXIM bank funded project is looking at sub-counties whose water coverage is below 50%. That is the criteria. I know there are so many questions why this EXIM is in this district and it is not here. I just felt it is important to first clarify on this. The sub-counties whose water coverage, sub-counties, is below 50% is what that project was funding. And in this, there were, the whole district, the whole country had about 23 districts amounting to 169 sub-counties. So the EXIM project is working, is implemented in 23 districts. The Nexus Green project is in many districts, but it was also looking at the assessment that was conducted for income generating and home improvement and financing. Then the other project is goes back to the grants. I wanted to highlight again that we have rural water is implementing activities in 6 regions. The 6 regions are Lila, Mbali, Moroto, Wakiso, Barara, and Futputu. That is why the presentation was being clustered in regions. All these have officers ready to provide technical support, support supervision in planning, budgeting, and accounting, and ensure that there is monitoring and reporting, and also to ensure there is equity, and also addressing the one source per village principle. From the presentation, you took note that the percentages were differing for water coverage, which was based on villages, and for safe water coverage based on population. And you saw that the national water coverage is at 67%, yet the coverage per water source is at 64%. So we have a big gap. Now to the questions. Procedure for decommissioning of water sources. We have a procedure, but the assessment has to first be conducted to ensure that that source, one, is not high yielding or it has dried up, two, or has contamination levels that cannot be treated, and therefore the system is condoned off. And when that is done, then politically, the same way we commission a borehole, when it has been completed, it is the same way we decommission. We have to do also a function for decommissioning that given well, with the reasons well outlined why that well has been rendered not fit to be used by the communities. So there is a procedure, there has to be a report and a water quality assessment that qualifies it to be capped off. This is for the boreholes. The second question is on dry boreholes. Do we pay for dry boreholes fully? Yes, on one side, no, on the other side. There are two types of contracts that we go through. Is what we call an admeasurement contract, which we encourage all local governments to do this. There was a circular by the PS in regards to this, that all local governments should go for admeasurement contracts. It has advantages and disadvantages. The advantage is that you pay for the value of what has been sunk. If there are 20 pipes, you pay for 20 pipes. If there are 35 pipes, you pay for 35 pipes. In most cases, we have saved money in this line. The disadvantage is, if you have not conducted your assessment properly, if you have really not done proper investigations, because we encourage local governments to make sure they conduct assessments and feasibility studies. If you have not done a good job, you will hit a dry well. And if your contract is an admeasurement contract, it implies that you will have to pay the contractor for the dry well. That is money lost. We always get audit queries in this. But the same explanation I'm giving, it's the same explanation we give Auditor General. The other one, second contract, is called a turnkey contract. Turnkey contract means that you tell this contractor, Somadra drillers, we want a well in a village called Blamburi, X, with a yield, say, of 5, minimum 3 cubic per liter. If he finds 5 cubic, it's a bonus. When you produce that well, we will pay you. But that turnkey contract is always very expensive, because the contractor is at liberty to drill how the minimum he can, as long as he gets the yield that we are talking about. If the total contract of the borehole is 25 million in a turnkey contract, if he drills the borehole as in 30 meters and he gets the water, you will pay him that 25 million. So the ministry has gone away from this. It has tried to discourage the use of turnkey contracts because we have lost money, and where we have tried, especially to improve some of these boreholes into production wells, into solar systems, we are unable, because some of these wells are shallow and have quality issues. One on meteorology information not distributed. I think somebody will answer that. MAIF, irrigation. We have an irrigation master plan. which has been put in place, but it is still lacking funding. We feel that this master plan will address most of the irrigation issues. But the current interventions under water for production, there are different models of implementation. They try to address most of these agricultural issues. But I think Minister of Agriculture will come in, we'll have an in-depth discussion on irrigation, water for irrigation and agriculture. Protection of forests, I think Mugabe will also talk about that, but we want also to let you know that we have an environmental police. We know it is, the force is not big, but it is in all regions. Also take advantage of the environmental police to make sure that we enforce the encroachers on the environment. Water stress in West Nile, we have pockets, very many pockets of water stressed areas in the country. We know West Nile is also one of the water stress, but assessments have to be conducted. There are proposals to have bulk water transfer from the Nile through that corridor, but also those ones, the studies are on of how much you can take. But water for production, I think we'll have to answer partly part of this, bulk water transfer. But for rural water, we try to use the available technologies, solar water systems, boreholes, existing streams to serve the communities with low cost tariffs. My colleagues will continue from here. Thank you.
Once again, I'm going to Magara Nicholas.
More questions?
No.
What does he say? We need the policy of one borehole per village.
Questions related to environment, immigration.
Ladies and gentlemen, the issues of climate change are real. It's no longer a myth. It's no longer something to talk about in news. It's now very, very real. So it's incumbent upon us as mobilizers of government to make sure that whenever we hold a meeting, we talk about issues of environment protection. We need to encourage issues of tree planting wherever we go. Yes, I'm going to summarize. Yes. Encourage the issue of tree planting wherever we go, protection of wetlands, because if we don't do this, we are likely to face a big problem, not only to ourselves, but also to the future generations to come. Let me go quickly to the asked questions. Lake Choga is drying and siltation is high. Lake Victoria is also drying. And also there is another question on wetland, that wetlands are going when the government is looking on. I want to say, yes, that it is true. There is wetland degradation, but as Ministry of Water and Environment and NEMA, we have put in strategies at least to stop, to halt, or to reverse the situation. Strategy number one, we no longer issue any permit in wetlands. So that means The investors who came the other time, when we are still issuing permits, are the ones now having permits. But now there is no permit issued in wetlands. Now I'm coming. Now, thank you so much for that appreciation. I hope it's in good faith. No. But as a government now, also, you know, we had a problem of enforcement. We were relying on police. I think the RDCs who are here, you know that the problems we have been facing with police, because the police we are using, they are normal police. They are not well trained in issues of environment management. Now, yes. Wait a moment. Let me explain myself. Because now, if you have a predetermined mind, then that one is not going to.
Let us listen to his question. We will have just be precise.
Yes, I'm trying.
Don't tell lies
So now, NEMA is and Ministry of Water. We are recruiting what we call Environmental Protection Force, which is equivalent to what you see with UWA. The force that we shall train, and already it's on ground. We have already trained them, but it's not enough. So the moment we amass that enough force, well trained and passionate about environment protection, then issues of enforcement will be there. I think you have seen what is happening in Kampala. There is some enforcement going on, for sure. There are some structures that are coming down. Not Rivij only. Even last week, there are some structures that came down. So regarding that, I think that's how we are doing it. But we can get also advice from you on how you would wish us to improve it better. Then the issues of tree planting, the issues of tree planting, on issues of tree planting, the government through Roots campaign, which is run out of trees, has committed at least every year to plant 40 million trees. But we have not achieved this. But we are trying, we are partnering with private sectors who are supporting us with funding for some seedlings. So now, at least every local government, every local governments at the district forest officers have been supported with at least a nursery bed. So when those trees are distributed to the communities, we have reports that some trees are distributed and they die in their verandas. So I think what we need now to do is to encourage people to plant those trees for future generations. Then regarding the Bugoma and the forest, the Central Forest Reserves, also I would put that one as to weak enforcement due to numbers of the enforcers we have. But if we have our specialized force under NFA, then that issue of degradation of those forest reserves is going to end. I think those are some of the issues that I can respond to. But let me call my friend, talk about the issues of carbon trading and also my contact. Okay.
This question here I want to address. Yes, thank you. I'm by the names of Pierre Stephen. I work as a Senior Climate Change Officer, the Department of Climate Change, representing the Commissioner Climate Change Department. I'm here to address a question that was raised by one of you, which says, under climate change, which project compensates farmers for planting trees, and how can one apply? Yes, I think the context in which this was written was, how can you benefit from carbon trading? I think that's what you meant. Yes, for now, the government of Uganda has just passed a regulation, it has gazetted a regulation on carbon markets. It is regulation 6, 2025. Now, the government does not compensate directly through projects. That one I should be very clear. What the government does, for now, is partnering with EcoTrust. There's a company called EcoTrust that deals with smallholder farmers. Now, the way they operate is quite different from the way government is going to operate under these new regulations that we have. The way they operate is they get farmers who have 1.5 acres of land. They start the planting together with them. They support them through the growing process until the trees are of 10 years old. Now, during this period, the company pays the farmers some small amount of money. In the lifespan of 10 years, they pay them 6 times in the 10-year period. Now, after that, now the company stops paying you, but then at the harvest time of 25 years, they pay you some money according to how much carbon the trees you've planted have sunk. I think if I'm to use a layman language, as sunk from the atmosphere. That is when they pay you. However, there is also an opportunity for big holder farmers. And these holder farmers who have maybe 100 acres and above, 50 and above, they can benefit from a project called Biodiversity Conservation Project, and this is being coordinated by NEMA. Now, this is where they calculate the amount of carbon your trees have sequestered or sunk from your garden. And then it is verified by an international verifier. Okay? The amount of carbon that you have sequestered, each ton of carbon goes for $2 to $3. So they calculate how much tonnage of carbon you have sequestered, and then they multiply times $2 of the number of trees that you have, or the acres. And then they calculate that, and then they give it to you. Now, under the carbon regulations, you can partner with an international investor. If you have your trees, let's say you have 1,000 trees, you partner with an investor who is willing to trade in carbon, or who is coming from outside. You partner with him, you grow your trees, because there are criteria of benefiting from this carbon project. If your tree is healthy, it is tall, it is indigenous, it gives you another amount of money. If your trees are exotic, let's say pine, eucalyptus, and all that, there is also a different calculation for that. So every tree that you have planted in terms of acres have to be verified. That is number one. If it is not verified, it cannot be traded. It has to be verified, certified by an international consultant, and then we can now start trading it internationally or nationally. So this trading can be internationally transferred to the outside countries, to companies outside, and you're given your money in dollars. Or else you can also trade it with the government of Uganda to meet the nationally determined contributions of the country. One thing I'd forgotten, for the Eco Trust, they only trade in indigenous trees. If your tree is not indigenous, they will not give you that money. But for government, you can negotiate. If you have pine, you have eucalyptus, you can negotiate. But for Eco Trust, it's only indigenous trees. Thank you.
I'm a principal wetlands officer. I work with the Wetlands Management Department. There are some questions which were specific to wetlands, and I wanted to tackle them. One is related to the use of wetlands, where you are planting rice vis-a-vis other crops. Wetlands, they are resources like any other resource. They are constituted by a number of parameters, including water, soil, and vegetation. The 1994-1995 wetland policy concentrated on the resource. One, it emphasized what was in the Constitution, that wetlands, they are owned by government. And the government will keep wetlands on behalf of people of this country for this generation and the next generation. The policy looks at use. All Ugandans have access, have right to use wetlands resources, but they have limited restriction on ownership. Ugandans don't own wetlands, but they have a right to use these wetlands. Now, how do you use? Then we go through the number of a set of regulations. We talk about NEMA regulations and so on. How do you get access to these resources? Now, the country, through that policy, we allow all traditional uses, all of them, fishing, collection of papyrus, collection of water, soil, sand, and so on, as long as it is on local basis. But at the moment it go commercial, you need to get a permission, authority. And this starts from the local council one. That's why there is a secretary for environment. You need to get permission from that secretary, depending on the size of the wetland you are going to use. At the sub-county, at the district, and then to the government. Now, management of wetland resources is a decentralized function. It's like other functions, you know, under the 1991 decentralization policy. Environment and wetland management was decentralized. Now, if you need to access resources from wetlands, you need to apply. That is, if it's for commercial purposes, so that you can use these wetlands. Now, what is happening? The question here, why do you allow rice growing and you don't allow other crops? The issue is that a wetland is the heart of ecosystem. It performs a number of functions. Now, we need a collaborative kind of function so that we are able to maintain wetland ecosystems. Now, in this case, it means that a rice grower, together with a person who harvests resources like a papyrus, a pastor who baptizes from that wetland, a landlord who claims ownership, a grazer who takes his animal to take water from there, and an administrator like me, we have equal interest in this wetland. And we need to work in a collaborative manner. Now, what happens is that if you were to do this kind of activity from a position X, you need to get permission from the coordinating body, which is NEMA, to make sure that at least you have a permission to do fish farming from that section of the wetland. And nobody else can come to harvest this resource from there. So, in circumstances where you don't have a permission from the authority, then what you are doing is illegal. And under section 80, they said that you remove, you direct the person who has done that to remove whatever he has introduced in the wetland, as long as it is not natural. Now, in failure to do so, then the government will come in to remove whatever you have introduced, be it a crop, be it an animal, be it a structure, like a building, anything. We help you to remove it. After, then we go to courts of law for you to pay for the process. Now, that is the process. Now, what you are trying to compare, I believe you are trying to say the crops we are removing in Rubiji and the rice in Ruera. Now, you will find that some of the farmers in Ruera, they have permits, meaning they were permitted after looking at a number of factors. And then, at the moment, you may be, whether you have grown yams or what, but you don't have the permit, the authority, then that's when you remove, we restore, we evict you. And the process, we subject all this assessment is wide. One, we should look at the size of wetland you are going to occupy. Now, in this case, I want to bring to your attention that all wetlands are equal. The wetland in Isebei, in the Kapuchora, a smaller one, which is 2 acres, perform the same functions like a Katonga in the Karungu. The community in the Karungu, they love that wetland, Katonga, in the equal manner, like the community in the Kapseri, Isebei, because the wetland on the other side provide the water for both production and domestic use. Next to this, so the policy, the wetland policy of 1995 gave powers to the adjacent community to protect that wetland and to make sure that's not distributed to the other side. Now, the other question here is, why do you allow investors, investors to destroy swamps? There is no deliberate process of government allowing investors to destroy wetlands. I've told you that under that same policy, even law, there are some activities which are subjected to environmental impact assessment, and there are some where you just go and conduct them without a permit. For example, I've told you that there is restriction on ownership, but there is access. You can access these resources freely. Now, if you were to put, for example, a road or a power line, what are you going to do when you reach a wetland? There's any way you are going to collect the other side. You have to access, but through a permit system. The projects we have talked about here in water and so on, all of them conduct environmental impact assessments, and we approve them before establishing them next to wetlands or collecting water from there. Now, it's similar to the investors. I want to address you to, for example, to Namavi, the Weyogerere, where almost the Oro Industrial Park is in a wetland, which was a forest reserve. But the forest reserve was degazetted completely. We knew that it is a wetland. At the time before starting to put up the industries, we mapped out some critical sections that they had to leave them intact for treatment of wastes and provision of other services. And those sections are there. But we are aware that to put up structures, there are some impacts that come, like a flooding and so on. And the way my colleague mentioned it, that the issue of post-monitoring and enforcement is key. After approval, you'll find that most of these investors, they don't adhere to the conditions. Then there is another question concerning peat, that there is how do we handle investors who want to extract peat from wetlands where we have just removed the people from practicing agriculture? If investors allowed does not risk having our government unpopular. Peat is a wetland resource like a kire. It exists in some wetlands, especially in southwestern Uganda, Rwanda, and so on. The amount we have, we are still conducting assessment to tell as a country. But we are aware that in some countries like Germany and others, they are using peat as a fuel. Now, when you go through the energy policy, peat is allowed to be used as a fuel for especially commercial purposes. Now, we have seen a number of investors who are in production. They are coming in to harvest peat from wetlands for that purpose. As a country, as a ministry, we are still conducting the national assessment and trying to understand what is the impact. So far, we have had a number of investors applying in to take up peat because it is a cheaper fuel. But we feel that we need to first understand the implications before we give the approvals. As per now, we have not approved any investor to harvest this peat because we know it stores a lot of carbon in the form of methane, and it is still a big bank for carbon for this country. Thank you.
Now, according to the directive of the president, when he was ordering RDCs and other departments, that there is nobody is allowed to be or to work within the wetlands. Then, according to your statement, it seems you are contradicting with the directive of the president. Because it's not only on my side.
No, I'm not contradicting. The issue is the policy allows you to harvest the resource. You have mentioned it. The president is saying because the percent, the 50%, they are not using. People are just coming in. Instead of harvesting the resources, they are cultivating, they are planting crops. They are doing that. That's what we put in directive, that you stop whoever is coming in. Actually, I think this is based on our status. We started on 15%.
I'm Dr. Bob Alex Ogwang, the Acting Commissioner of Metrology in the Department of Meteorological Services under the Ministry of Water and Environment. We've got only one question concerning the meteorological information not being shared on time. We have various channels which are used routinely to ensure that early warning information on weather and climate reaches everybody in the country. But before I mention the channels, I request to draw your attention as our leaders to a kind of time bomb we are sitting on. Where we sit in the Meteorological Service, we have a research arm. And in our analysis, we have seen temperatures rising more or less steadily in all the regions. The rise is at different rates, different regions, but the trend is typically on the rise. We have seen in recent years increasing frequency and intensity of extreme weather events. They are occurring very frequently and more intense in recent years. We have also seen changes in the onset of seasonal rains. They are varying a lot. And all these have had very devastating impacts on our people. You have seen in recent years, including last week, where we had a water spot over Lake Victoria and the impact over Kalangala. We used not to have a lot of this. The last one which occurred was on Lake Bunyonyi, somewhere in the west, in 2019, January. Now, we expect this kind of extreme weather events to be increasing if nothing is done on our side. The reality is we cannot do a lot in terms of mitigation. We need to struggle to adapt, but we should make every effort to protect our wetlands, to protect our forests. Why? Because they have a bearing on our rainfall patterns. As we encroach on our wetlands, as we cut the trees, we are indirectly affecting our microclimate, where you settle, where you sit. So I encourage us to ensure that we protect our wetlands, we plant more trees. If you reach my village, for example, my old father, he did a lot in terms of planting, keeping the traditional trees. Even if people are crying elsewhere, that's very hot, but when you get to that place, you feel comfortable. If everybody does that, then there will be a difference in our communities. I will tell you later, that village. Now, we do share various timescales of weather informations. Most of the people usually know the seasonal forecast, which is pronounced. Our farmers love this a lot because it helps them in the strategic planning. But we also have short-term weather information and advisories shared for tactical planning, like 6-hourly weather information is given every day, every 6 hours. We have 12 hours weather information for the marine, the water users. We have 24 hours forecast for the whole country, provided every day. If you watch UBC, you'll find it over there. We have 10 days weather information. Our farmers are always calling. We need this information. And every 10 days, this weather information is shared, freely available. There is monthly weather updates. We give this. We issue it every month. Then the seasonal forecast, which is very popular, which we usually release at the media center. Now, all this information, we need to pick interest as leaders, encourage our people to make use of this weather information, which is freely available. Now, you have also seen, I need to say this, especially when you have leaders together. February there was a general outcry about the high temperatures. At the media center, they asked me, did you expect this? I said, yes. Number one, February is the hottest month of the year in our country. This year, the situation was exacerbated by the delayed onset of the rainfall. Rainfall got delayed because of the diversion of the moisture, which was meant to come into East Africa by a cyclone which was around Madagascar, Mozambique, that channel. It was drawing moisture. Southeasterlies, which were meant to come in, were getting diverted, so the moisture was going to that low pressure center. That's what caused the delay. So since it was already hot and it got delayed, the heat was much, and this is what we usually get every single year. Even last year, we had a similar case where people complained everywhere. This is partly because of climate change. And our action, individual action, not everybody, individual action is contributing to that warm weather we are experiencing. Now, coming back to the channels, we have a program called the National Climate Outlook Forum. Now, in this forum, we bring ministries, departments, and agencies of government together in one room. We release the forecast, we show them this is what we expect in this region. After the presentation, we separate the technical teams. Those from Ministry of Health, they sit together with our team member, Ministry of Agriculture together, Water Resources together, and the implication of the forecast is discussed. That if this area is getting excess rainfall, what is the implication on agriculture? In that process, which we call co-production, the advisories are developed with the technical experts. Now, those advisories for the different sectors are collected, combined with the forecast, and we release the seasonal forecast with the advisories together. So this is what we do routinely. And we use government systems to ensure that this information filters to the grassroots. We have natural resources officers who receive this. If you get back, you can inquire. They routinely get this document. And we expect them to ensure that this information reaches the people who need them. And we don't restrict ourselves to that. We have thousands of email database. Every time we're releasing publicly at the media center, we also share through emails. We send our team members to the field, different regions, radio stations, and discuss in the local language. This is what we do, and probably you have seen in your respective regions. Between October and December, there was a serious challenge, but it didn't stop us from generating and sharing this information. You must have heard in Parliament the discussions about reallocation of budgets of the mainstreamed entities recently. So the budget to dispatch team members to the field to discuss in local languages were kind of hindered. But even then, we use development partners provided some support for certain regions where they have their projects. So we disseminated this as well. So we encourage you members to reach out to us. If you need a given information, just reach out. It will be processed and shared. As I finish, asante sana. As I finish, these forecasts, particularly seasonal forecasts, are usually translated into 35 languages, depending on the budget. Thank you very much.
You have only 3 minutes to complete your answer.
There'll be enough, Chair. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Protocol observed. I'm Engineer Ronald Katokaizi, Assistant Commissioner, Water for Production, in charge of development in the Ministry of Water and Environment. The first question is about Bulsam Dam in Imbale. Yeah, at one time we had secured funding from the World Bank, but there was a wrangle between the political leadership, then the chairperson and the minister, and there was an issue of land which could not be solved. So if now as a district they have resolved this, then we can pursue it further and look for resources. A question on in Manafa, on Nexus Green, I request for more details. I'll take it up. Regarding the program for irrigation and water for agricultural production in the country, we are in the process of developing a master plan jointly with other key ministries, Ministry of Agriculture and the others, so that we consolidate all the plans and intervention to one document. And we are currently concluding a strategic paper to be presented as directed by His Excellency the President, which will give the strategic direction that will shape the aspirations of the country. There is a case in Bukweju. I think I'm going to follow up because this is a case where there are defects, but the allegation is that the contractor was paid fully. So I'm going to request for additional information. For Karamoja, it is not true that we don't have you in the plan. Currently, we are finalizing designs for constructing 2 dams in 2 clusters. One in Nangolopolon cluster, which is in Kotido, a 3 million cubic dam with 3 satellite valley tanks and 6 production wells. We are concluding that. And another in the Msui cluster, which is covering Amdat and Nakapiripiriti, which is also a satellite dam with 3 valley tanks and the corresponding production wells. So we are fast tracking that. Unfortunately, for some of the interventions like in Moroto, where we have the funding is under KfW, the German Development Corporation, and its bank, with the additional resources from the government of Uganda. But we're also experiencing vandalism and arson on some of the systems we have installed. I've just received some disturbing pictures from Moroto, where the entire system, the irrigation system and water supply system were vandalized and also set ablaze. There is an issue in the park. I'm going to investigate this. It calls for information that is not available. Namaru Dam, we invited bidders, and this was the first attempt of procurement in December 2024, but all the bids were far above the available resources. It was retendered and rescoped to fit within the available funding that is from the African Development Bank and the government of Uganda. We hope that by the end of April we shall have evaluated, and we expect a contractor to be on site by August this year. There is also this one from Alebtong to do with the dams. I'm going to request for specific information for follow-up, because these, if they are old dams, they need reassessment for rehabilitation. The actual problem was not stated. Albertong. Alibtong. Okay, so I'm going to take that up. That is for rehabilitation. Thank you. Otuke, it's the same. We are going to have an update because it states that they were visited, but the engineers never came back. So I'm going to request for, I'm going to share my number so that I can get additional information. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that's all I had.
I will attempt in 2 minutes. Thank you, Chair. All protocol observed. I wish to recognize my mentor, Engineer Katuremu, who is here. He was our board member and he mentored me in National Transport Corporation. The question is, I'm going to merge them so that we can speed up. The issues of tariff will be from 4 cities, Koboko, Guru, Bunyangabo, and others. We have a structure, and it's gazetted, it's an instrument. Every area station, even where the umbrellas usually cross a bit and we share, so that we benchmark and we do peer review on how we charge our people. If we start from the top, the PSP, what we call public stand tap, which is the lowest price per jerrycan is 25 shillings, but people are cheated. Sometimes the vendors push it up to 200. And we always try to say in Kampala, the informal settlements, I mentioned about it, prepaid meters have helped us to cut the vendors, and you can access water 24 hours, 7 days a week at that price of 25 shillings. And the issue, of course, of profit, National Water does not make a profit. We call it a surplus. We recoup the money into investments. I even told you about the kilometers, the new treatment plants, including the new one, the Mugore, which is just here at Akabare here, which you constructed using your revenue collected, and many, many others. So we don't make profit. We have actually saying we make a surplus to recoup into investments. And it's a directive by the instruments of finance and parliament and all that. The issue of prepaid meters is very key because people refer to Yaka, the prepaid meters for electricity, and it is science. When you talk about electricity, it is invisible. You have talked about conductor electronics, what, blah, blah. Very dangerous. You touch, you die. It's like a bullet. You don't see the bullet, but it takes you out of action. But for water, we are still mechanical. The component of meter is a mechanical, just like this item I'm holding. And then you convert it to digital to become prepaid. And the size, the footprint is bulk. Almost half of what I'm standing around here present. But the prepaid is just somebody forgot a phone. This size, hanging just on a wall, on a pole. Vandalism, prepaid you cannot vandalize because it will take your life. For water, you can even bathe, steal it, and go with some water. It will not harm you. So we are very cautious. The cost of production for a prepaid is almost 5 times to 7 times the cost of prepaid meter by electricity. But we are doing for the bulk critical numbers, the mass, like in Kisenyi, where we share a prepaid meter by about 10 homes or 20. But for domestic household ministries, it's a bit very, very expensive. It needs mindset, behavioral change, sensitization. And it's not affordable in terms of national water financing it. If you have to finance it, it has to be cost shared, pre-financed, and some people will not take it on, since already complaining about the tariff. But the tariff actually is just the lack of how the structure is put and the understanding of the ingredients of the tariff and the consumption patterns. The taps are running and all the time we waste. I go to the next one, boreholes, and I conclude. In the cities and urban centers, you know that you don't have proper sanitation. Sanitation is very, 30% you shall have excelled in the next 10 years. But you are now at 10%, 6%, some areas none. On-site sanitation, pit latrine, soak pits, septic tanks. There's a lot of underground pollution. And if you drill or you do a small shallow well, you are just getting coliforms, the bacteria, which are in feces, then you cause epidemics of cholera, typhoid, and that. So we don't entertain that breakdown of good health into epidemics and the camps of typhoid and cholera. We protect the citizens, and we use laboratory up to chief chemist to test the water. If you have a permit obstruction requirements, there are conditions. It's not free. The ministry is here. They give you conditional permit, and you have to comply with the requirements so that you don't spread the disease under free water business. Also, somebody in Arua, I mean other places, they talk about city officer, water officer, engineer. It's a duplication because the government is scaling down on employment costs. So you cannot have Alex in Arua and he's called a water officer, then I'm a manager, I'm a civil engineer, water treatment, mechanical machines. Where national water operates, we have the engineers, maybe one or two, depending on discipline, electrical, mechanical, civil, and also process for treatment of sewage and all that. So the general colonial mentality of having an officer gazetted as a water officer or city water engineer, no, it can't work today. And finally, the dry spell strategies, he has talked about it. It's the issue of investments, strategies to make sure that the resources which we invest in, they are climate resistant, resilient, and when surface water is on board and you have dry spell, they dry up, of course, that's the drying, and they start having shortages in pumping. When it rains, again you have washing away of the infrastructure. So we have to put in requirements, either through donor funding or resources internal by URA, and invest in a way that during the dry season, we can cope with the requirements of the demand versus supply. Thank you very much, Chair. I'm available, yes.
Mr. Chairman, just a small